Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, editor-in-chief of The Washington Examiner. If you're joining us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel and join the 250,000 who are already there. I'm joined by Byron York, our chief political correspondent. And Byron, I want to talk about a development over the weekend where six Democrats, congressional Democrats who had either been in the military or in the intelligence services, distributed a video on X calling on military personnel to refuse illegal orders. Now, they claim that they were stating an obvious duty, but also sounding the alarm about President Trump's mass immigration enforcement and the destruction of the drug runners in the Caribbean. Many people, however, think that the Democrats, they were actually engineering a reckless political stunt that undermines the commander-in-chief's authority. So who should win this argument and who is winning this argument?
Well, first of all, reckless political stunt is the perfect way to describe what they were doing, because they were basing a political campaign on a premise that could not survive a single follow-up question. So when these people, these members of Congress, went to the press to be interviewed, even biased members of the press asked the question, which is, has President Trump issued any illegal orders that you're aware of? And they didn't name and could not name a single one. Senator Alyssa Slotnick, the senator from Michigan, who had not served in the military, she was in the CIA, mentioned the Nuremberg trials, the Nazi trials. And then if that wasn't good enough, she also mentioned the movie A Few Good Men, which was fiction. So it was an embarrassing situation, but it's a serious thing that they have done. And some of these people, like Mark Kelly, have long and distinguished careers in the military. You don't want to ignore that or in any way undermine it. He had done all sorts of things in the U.S. military. But what they're saying was, it's, I think, just a needless provocation and raising of this issue.
Right. The Democrats, they're correct that some courts have said that Trump lacks the authority, for example, to order the National Guard into cities. But other courts have actually said he's well within his rights, and that this will probably go to the Supreme Court, and that's the proper place where this needs to be adjudicated. But the Democrats seem to be saying they're calling on, Private Joe Blow to make up his own mind. It's a recipe for chaos, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And, people with military experience point out that military men and women are instructed as part of their training that they should not obey an illegal order. But of course, the question is always, do I decide that for myself? Do I wait until somebody above my pay grade, like the Supreme Court of the United States, has decided that the order is illegal? What's going on? And if you look at the video that the six members made, they didn't say anything about that. They just simply said, you must refuse an illegal order. So it just raised these provocations in a way that was absolutely unnecessary. And it really has no basis in fact right now.
And it's not as though, let us say the Supreme Court were to decide that actually, no, President Trump is not allowed to order the National Guard into Portland or whatever he may decide. This would be a narrow question. It's not like he's ordering the shooting of civilians randomly to try and intimidate them and get them, just get them off the streets or something. Is it? It's not an obvious or blatantly illegal thing. It's a very narrow thing, which it is absolutely wrong for individual soldiers or guardsmen to decide. But the Pentagon has responded by threatening to court-martial Senator Kelly, who is still subject to the military code. First of all, of course, it seems kind of unlikely to me, but maybe I got this wrong. But Kelly is also fundraising on the whole dispute. So this is all about politics rather than principles. So talk a little bit about Kelly and how we should see that.
Well, of course, that's true. As I said before, Kelly does have a distinguished military career. In addition, he was a NASA astronaut, so he's done a lot of stuff in service to the United States. He would also kind of like to be president of the United States, as many members of the United States Senate would. He might be preparing for a campaign, maybe he's not. He is fundraising on this. I have received emails from basically Kelly's organization saying, President Trump says I should be hanged. President Trump wants to put
Yeah,
me in jail.
yeah,
So he's clearly making hay on this. On the other hand, this whole idea of the court martialing and all of this seems to be overkill as far as I'm concerned,
hmm
because the Trump administration has such a solid case against these members who have made this video, evidenced in part by the fact that a number of journalists are asking that simple question I said before, which is, has President Trump issued any illegal orders? And they're getting a mumbling response in
right,
return.
right.
So it seems to be it's a political fight. It's being fought politically, and it doesn't need to turn into the code of military justice.
Right, right, exactly. So let's turn our attention abroad to Switzerland and more specifically to Geneva, where the biggest story, once again, as it has been often in the past 4 years, is Ukraine. And over the weekend, President Trump produced a 28-point peace proposal, and the details are being thrashed out. The problem is, as everybody knows, the devil is in the details, and the details seem to be changing and they seem to be malleable. Does this gambit have any greater chance of than previous ones of ending the war?
Well, first of all, it came out of kind of murky circumstances. It was leaked to Axios, and it was presented as the Trump plan. And then there were reports that Marco Rubio had said, basically, no, this was a Russian wish list.
Hmm.
And there were people who, used AI and said, oh no, the wording of this, it was clearly translated from Russian into English. And then the administration says, no, it's our plan, and that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner had worked it out. So, putting all that confusion aside, which was basically kind of mishandling by the Trump administration, it is a series of proposals,
Right.
and it does start conversations. As far as I can tell, there are some things that are clearly unacceptable to Ukraine, and should be unacceptable to anybody else outside of Russia, basically granting Russia territory that it has not won militarily.
Right.
The idea of reducing the size of the Ukrainian army strikes me as something that's going to happen anyway, because the Ukrainian army wasn't all that big before the Russian invasion. It's really big now, and usually what happens after wars is the size of the military goes down. So there are some issues that clearly have to be worked out. A big one is Ukraine joining NATO. I think President Trump has said no, never. I think that's pretty clear, the United States position. So can an actual agreement come out of all those things? I don't know. But the one thing about committing proposals to paper is then everybody can look at it and argue about it, and that's actually progress of a sort.
Yeah, there was what might seem to be progress to the extent that Ukraine has most recently just said that it's kind of on board with the basics. And my suspicion is that it's saying that it's on side because it wants to stay on side with President Trump and doesn't. And as the details are thrashed out and become probably becoming less acceptable to Putin, for example, perhaps not giving areas of the Donbass region to Putin, which the Russian military has not yet conquered. The Ukraine wants Russia to be the power that says, "Niet, no, we're not doing this," and that isn't the. I mean, I don't know, but it seems to me the truth continues to be that the minimum that Putin will take continues to be more than the maximum that Zelensky and Ukraine can give. So there's a lot of gamesmanship going on here. Ukraine doesn't want to be the power that says, no, well, this is completely unacceptable. On the other hand, one wonders whether it is acceptable to Ukraine to give us up as much as it seems to be.
Yeah, I think you're right about all that. We've seen a number of reports lately, including one from the Examiner's Tim Carney, who just went to Ukraine, of basically Ukrainians saying, "We're tired. We don't really want to win. We want this to end."
Right.
So there clearly seems to be some support inside Ukraine for territorial concessions and a settlement to end the war. It would be entirely characteristic of the way these things work for there to be a lot of haggling over the territorial concessions. Now, in my opinion, and I've said this for a long time, the war is going to end with Russia gaining control of some territory in
Right.
Ukraine that it did not have before the invasion. That's just going to happen, in my opinion. It's unacceptable to others that no, cannot be done. No settlement if that's part of it.
Right.
I also feel that Ukraine should not be in NATO. So those are things that I think are going to end up being in a settlement at the end of this.
Right.
But right now we are in the situation you said, which is that the minimum that Putin would accept is more than the maximum that Ukraine would accept.
Yeah, so there's another aspect of this which I think it, in the last month or two, President Trump has been talking about more serious sanctions that would hurt Russia or at least intensify pressure on Russia. Doesn't the isn't that undermined by this new kind of proposal, which, even if inaccurately, was nevertheless interpreted when it first came out as, oh, this is just President Putin's wish list? Doesn't the kind of supply, the starting point for new negotiations, which looks very favorable to Russia or looked very favorable to Russia, kind of convey to Putin that, okay, the past 2 months have, of somewhat intensifying rhetoric from Washington saying that we might have more intense sanctions? Doesn't it just kind of undercut that and really give Putin another signal that he can continue to play this along while his military grinds down the Ukrainians, and saying that, indicating that Trump is actually not willing to go to the one place that he appears not to have tried, short of actually intervening militarily, the one place he had not tried, which is really intensifying the pressure on the Russian economy.
Yeah, the fact is that Trump has talked a lot about heightened sanctions over the last several months, and he's been very slow to pull the trigger on it. And so, as long as he's not doing it, as long as he's just threatening to do it, Russia, I think, can work on the assumption that he's not going to do it, and it's only going to be proved that he will if he does.
Right.
So I think we're not there at this point. Obviously, I think Trump should have imposed these sanctions, certainly after the meeting in Alaska. I think that would have been a good time to do it. Anytime you've got this situation where Putin has rejected an overture, and then you can say, okay, here come the sanctions. And I think if they reject this process now, it'd be another time to impose the sanctions. But Trump is going to, I think you and I probably talked about this at the time of the Alaska thing. At some point, Trump's going to have to do it. And we'll see if he does.
Yeah. Well, that's where we'll leave it. I mean, I don't want to be the pessimist, but I have to say this looks like another go round the track. I hope that I'm wrong. Byron, thank you very much for joining me on the conversation, and thanks again to all our viewers. Join us again next time for Political Perspectives.